Okay, well, I'll work on that.
Good evening. Welcome to the Salem Area Mass Transit District Board meeting for tonight. Tonight is Thursday, January 23rd, and we are meeting here at Courthouse Square. The meeting is now open. To begin, Linda, could you please note the attendance? Thank you very much. And then Director Richards, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Richards. Next on our agenda, as is custom, is to have a safety moment for the day. Our general manager will share that information with us now.
Thank you. So our theme for this month is fatigue. And as a transit industry, we have a large majority of our employees who work non-traditional work hours. So we take fatigue and safety very seriously because of that. And so we promote in the workforce to make sure that people use healthy habits to make sure they control fatigue. To include healthy sleeping habits. And the tips we've shared this month is to ensure they stick to a strict sleep schedule for consistency as best as possible, practice a bedtime ritual, avoid exercise, alcohol, cigarettes, and caffeine prior to going to sleep, and to make sure that they stay hydrated, which helps with fatigue. That concludes our safety message.
Thank you very much. Next up are announcements, and I believe our general manager has one.
Sure. Just for the board, so we are pulling item H.3, which is the quarterly financial reports, and we will present that next month. And you should all have in your supplemental board packets revised memos for items G.2, G.3, and G.4. Those memos have had some additional clarifications put into it, and we'll review those during the staff reports.
Thank you. Next up, we have public comment, and I have two names on here. The first is Britta Franz.
I'm Britta Franz. I lived in Salem since the 60s when I moved here to expand my family's business and open a store downtown. And since that time, as a businesswoman, I've continued to be active in the community and done all kinds of fun things. But the funnest thing is that people are still remembering the bus stops, your bus stops, our bus stops some years ago that were full of, in the summer for 1 month, of the month of August, volunteers from all over the city applied to a private group of 2 people plus helpers to color and design, including some professional artists from around the state of Oregon, and decorated the public bus stops. And to this day, some of you, and certainly I, hear a lot about it from strange people that introduce themselves or not and say, "Aren't you the lady, and when are we going to do it again?" And I hear that other people are doing that. And finally, the time has come that nobody in your busy time has suggested it. And so Lorraine Day and I decided that we would again offer to do that. We have already lined up a couple of other people so that we ourselves won't be doing all the work that's involved. Didn't cost us anything. It was never our idea to do that. Didn't cost you anything, except that when we had you offered us a celebration for all the participants, and you served us food, cookies. And all the children and the parents and the grown-ups and the groups had a wonderful time, and you did too. So I'm here to say, and I just gave you all an idea of what it was. This was my worksheet. I just thought you'd have an idea. All the red dots and all the blue dots are the beginning of the 7 that we thought. And then, as you know, we had 45 all over town, groups and churches and individuals and little children and people from Dallas. And I'd like your permission to go ahead and do it again. the arrangement we had in it, and I still have the original, very short. You developed rules and regulations as far as limited whatever, and we passed those on. I have every single person that applied. We talked to them. We organized which place they wanted and reserved it for them for the whole summer from the time that they were allowed to tell us, which we opened it in May, and then we didn't do it till actual April. No, we started in April, reported in May, excuse me, and then we actually did it in August because we do have to avoid the art commission time for the art center at the park, because a lot of our people are interested in that, and this takes some volunteers. So that's my story, and I'm happy to answer any questions or continue with great enthusiasm.
Great.
Hi, Sadie. Hi.
Thank you very much. I know our general manager will look into it and make sure that we can learn more and consider that. So thank you.
All right, are we done?
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. That's quick and easy, and that's how you need to do these things, and I'd like to hear soon because it takes quite a lot of behind-the-scenes planning and organizations. And thank you for all of your volunteerism. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you for coming and sharing that. Next up is Tyler McCauley.
I didn't have anything specific when I signed up. I just, oftentimes somebody signs up and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I think that is a great idea. And I wanted to, and as an add-in to your safety moment, I'd like to remind you guys and people in general that even though it's starting at lighter and later, turn your headlights on, please. It makes the cars easier to see. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Seeing no other members of the public that would like to comment at this time, we'll move on with our agenda to the consent calendar. So the board hopefully has had a chance to review that, and if so, is there a motion to?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Great.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That the consent calendar is approved. And next up is the adoption of the 2020 federal legislative agenda, and Director Carney will present that to us now. A little bit of background while she's descending down to speak to us. She, myself, and Director Bush, along with General Manager Pollack, Patricia Feeney, and then our legislative team have met a couple times to discuss our state and then federal agendas, and we approved our state agenda at the last meeting, and now we're going to learn about our federal agenda.
Thank you, President Davidson. For the record, Director Sadie Carney, Subdistrict 3. And I am going to present to you this evening our 2020 proposed federal legislative agenda. So as President Davidson noted, we did approve a state agenda at our last board meeting. The federal agenda was delayed as we were waiting on information from the Federal Transportation Administration, which we received shortly before our last legislative subcommittee meeting. And that information helped inform the proposal that we have for you this evening. So I will start with our grant requests. Our grant requests are all for capital investments in our bus fleet. The first is 5 emissions buses. It's a $3,580,000 grant request. This will allow us to purchase 5 zero-emissions electric vehicles, which I think are low or no emissions. And I'm not sure I completely understand the differentiation between low and no, but electric vehicles nonetheless. We had a pretty robust conversation about what the charging infrastructure would look like and how we would manage that as a district. And we thought that it was an important inclusion in terms of moving our district forward, and sort of in keeping with a lot of the advances we're seeing around the state and the country in terms of the way that public transportation is going. So we agreed as a subcommittee that that was an important grant request. We also agreed that the replacement of 10 ADA paratransit buses was necessary. The 5 zero-emission buses, as well as the 10 ADA paratransit bus replacements, are replacing buses that are beyond what is considered their useful life at a federal level. And we have a good portion of our fleet currently that's operating in that condition due to reduction in federal funds available to help us with those kinds of replacements. And so while we have requested 5 zero emissions and 10 paratransit bus replacements, it's not likely that we'll get everything we're asking for, but this meets in part our need, and we think that it's a reasonable request for our size agency. So moving on from there to policy issues, so it's the grant request that will be coming to meet our capital needs, and then the policy issues are a little bit larger in terms of how they support both our agency and all public transportation agencies, or many of them. The first of which is supporting funding for the bus and bus facility program. And, sorry, I lost my place on this. This has to do with some of the different grant programs that we talk about from time to time with this group. The capital investment grants, which we commonly refer to as the 5309, State of Good Repair 5337, and Buses and Bus Facilities 5339. This is all included in your attachment because for me those numbers can get a little confusing. Fiscal year 2021 appropriations requests, and finally an infrastructure package that includes $7.14 billion in funding for bus transit programs. And last, we are supporting the extension and permanence of the alternative fuels tax credit. So I'm happy to answer any questions or defer them to folks that might have better answers than me. And if we don't have questions, then I would look for a motion.
Make a comment. The infrastructure package, that $7.14 billion is not for our agency, it's for the country.
Right.
So-
That's, I was trying to make that clear at the
Salem is not
top of my
responsible for that.
policy proposals.
Yeah.
Sorry about if I
That's
was
okay.
misleading, because that would certainly be more than we could figure out what to do with as a board.
Yes, and it replaces approximately, according to our document, 14,874 buses nationally. So
Yes.
we are, as an agency, in support of that on the federal level. Is what that?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Sorry if I.
That's okay. Just clarifying.
Mhm. Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Carney? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move the board adopt the 2020 federal legislative agenda.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is giving the authority to the general manager to execute a contract with Century West Engineering for some bus stop improvements.
I think I'll ask Steve Dickey to present the staff report.
Good evening, President Davidson, members of the board. This evening, we are bringing forward to you a request to have the board authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Century West Engineering to provide engineering, design, and construction support services for our bus stop improvement project. The district has been working on the bus stop improvement project over the past few years and has been systematically working through the system to bring its stops up to ADA standards and also improve accessibility for our passengers to our bus services, as well as making the stops in many cases more convenient and improving their customer experience. We have been working with an agency and have had a contract in place, but we have reached the term limits of that contract and therefore have to rebid these services. The contract will provide for this, will bring on an agency that will provide design services, so actually drawing the designs for the stops and any associated engineering for the construction. These designs then are utilized when we put the construction packages out to bid. So these are the documents that the prospective contractors will use to determine their bids for the construction of the stop improvements. And then this contract also authorizes the same agency to provide support to the construction contractor should they get into situations where there might need to be slight modifications to the design, such as a utility that was not anticipated being in place, or potentially having to shift because of a conflict with the existing infrastructure that was not noted early in the evaluation process. The contract this process was done through an architectural and engineering request for proposals, and under the Brooks Act, architectural and engineering proposals have to be awarded based on qualifications only. Price of the contract is not allowed to be part of the selection criteria. Once the selection has been made based on qualifications, then the prices are evaluated in a cost-price analysis to determine if they are within a fair and reasonable range based on current market prices for services provided. This contract will be awarded based on the hourly rates for the different levels of types of expertise and professional certifications of the services provided, with a cap amount of $95,000 for the contract. And $95,000 is based on the budget amount with the bus stop improvement program for this phase designated for engineering, design, and construction support services. And this project was included in the fiscal year 2020 budget, 2020 budget approved by the Board of Directors. So with that, we considered and received two proposals, one from Century West Engineering Corporation in Portland and one from Crow Engineering in Beaverton. Both were considered responsive, meaning that they met all of the required criteria for being considered for a contract. And the selection committee then scored the proposals and they met in a group to evaluate the scoring. And the final scoring is shown in your supplement on page 4, comparing the engineering under the qualifications and experience of the firm, project organization and staffing plan, project management and technical approach, and then the overall total. And as you can see, Crow Engineering scored 80.6 total overall points, and Century West Engineering scored 96.7, and that is out of a potential of 100 points total. So based on the qualifications evaluation, Century West Engineering was selected as the apparent winner of the contract for not to exceed amount of $95,000. The funding for this is from a federal grant from Federal Transit Administration and local match to go with that. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Are there any questions?
This is the bus stop improvement program as an ongoing project?
Yes, so we've actually had 3 phases of grants over the years. The very first was actually some very, very old money that was repurposed for doing bus stop improvements. And as we are working our way through the process, due to weather cycles of when you can construct the bus stops, when going through permitting processes with some of our local jurisdictions having a more involved and arduous process than others. We've been doing it in phases, and so this is, we had reached the point where the first batch of stops, which was actually almost double the amount that we're looking at doing with this particular contract, we've reached the capacity of all those being put into either being constructed or set aside for future construction, of which some of those we are working on right now because we have to obtain easements from property owners to build some of that on the private property. So that process, we have the drawings for those, but we won't do that construction until we've obtained those easements. For the next set of drawings and design and construction support services, because the first contract, we met the terms of that contract's limits, we have to put this out to bid again for this next phase.
And is this, are we proposing to award the contract to the same group that received it prior?
Yes, but then again, it was based on qualifications as submitted in this solicitation.
Okay.
And I can say that the distinguishing factor between the two companies, both seem to be very qualified companies, but the experience and the focus of their companies differed, and that Century West works predominantly in civil engineering, which is the type of work that is mostly involved in this, where you're talking about light site excavation and the pouring of pads, concrete pads to connect sidewalks to curbs, restructuring curbs, doing the landscaping and associated finish work around that, versus structural engineering, which was Crow Engineering's predominant area of expertise, was in structural engineering and much larger structures, but not as much in civil engineering. And their Century West also has extensive experience working with public agencies, which has its own particular requirements around the public funding and the reporting requirements and prevailing wage, whereas Crow Engineering was predominantly their experience and their references they provided were with private companies.
Appreciate the work that the Selection Evaluation Committee did on this. Just curious if COVID certification questions ever got brought up during the process.
Pardon, I didn't.
COVID certification, are either of these finalists COVID certified?
COVID? I'm sorry.
It's the Minority Women ESB veteran-owned.
So I would like to invite our Contracts and Procurement Manager, Dan Knaus, to answer that question, since he manages the procurement and solicitation process.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. To answer your question, COVID was identified is identified in all of our procurement processes. We check the COVID registry for specifically DBEs because we have a DBE goal that we're trying to obtain. And neither one of these organizations were certified in any of the COVID categories.
Okay, thank you for the answer, but I appreciate that we are actively working to try and meet the COVID.
I just have a comment. I appreciate all the thorough information so that we can make a good decision on this and be as well informed as possible.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. We need a motion to approve this.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I move the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract in the amount not to exceed $95,000 with Century West Engineering Corporation for the purpose of providing design and construction support services for the district's bus stop improvement program.
Second.
We have a second from Director Carney. All those in favor, or excuse me, is there any discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is unanimous, motion passes. The next item on our agenda is to authorize the general manager to execute a contract with R.L. Reimers Company for the purchase of generators for the Del Webb headquarters.
Thanks. I'll ask Greg Thompson, our maintenance manager, who will present the next two staff reports.
President Davidson, members of the board, good evening. Tonight I am asking the board to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with R.L. Reimers for the purchase and installation of 2 backup generators at the Del Webb Operations Headquarters for a not-to-exceed amount of $291,000. District staff have been working diligently to ensure Cherriots will be prepared in the event of a natural disaster. In 2017, Karen Garcia, our Security and Emergency Management Manager, worked with Bold Planning to develop a continuity of operations plan. At the ensuing tabletop exercises, where various scenarios are tested, one reoccurring topic kept coming to the surface is what do we do in the event of a power outage? When staff started listing all of the critical functions that need to occur with electricity, it was evident that action needed to be taken. The scope of work for this project was developed by assessing current and future needs of both the administration and maintenance buildings. Instead of attempting to identify individual critical circuits and their corresponding power loads, it made sense to electrify both buildings completely. In doing so, any future electrical demands will be met. This project identified a separate generator and associated automatic transfer switches for each building. Staff completed a detailed scope of work and released an invitation to bid in November of 2019. The bid closed December 17th of 2019. The bids were then reviewed by an internal committee to score the criteria for being the lowest cost meeting specifications, which R.L. Reimers was deemed to be that vendor. Funding for this project is included in the fiscal year 2019-2020 adopted budget in the Capital Projects Fund. The project is funded with federal funds and a local match and is outlined in Table B in your packet. Staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with R.L. Reimers Company for a not-to-exceed amount of $291,000. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Director Carney.
The Del Webb facility, I know where it's located, but I'm not sure how far away it would be from a floodplain.
I don't believe it's in a floodplain.
I don't think it is either, but that
Correct.
doesn't mean it wouldn't flood at some point. I'm just wondering, I mean, I know we have lots of different kinds of natural disasters.
Right, we were talking mostly whatever would cause a power outage for long term. We've had a few small ones, but having, we were looking at, call center functionality, vehicle dispatching, maintenance, and if anything was long term, those critical components would stop.
Yeah.
It could be in the event of an earthquake, any of those fires, transformer blowing, all of those things is probably the most reasonable to expect in a natural disaster that the loss of electricity would happen.
Yeah, the Cascadia subduction earthquake potential was what came to my mind first.
Yes.
And this is maybe something for discussion after we have a motion on the table, but it's about our need to provide paratransit services when we might be operating in a limited emergency capacity in response to a natural disaster like that. Just because that was one of the things brought up in the staff report was the need to maintain the call center for those services.
Thank you. Do you have a question? No? Okay. Any other questions? I've got one. Actually, I've got a few. I lied. What fuel will the generator use?
Both of these generators will have a tank that's underneath the generator of diesel.
Okay, and then given the underground tank, how long do we anticipate being able to run?
It won't, and that's kind of almost the cool part. It won't be, we have other fuel storage, so we have 20,000 gallons of diesel on site. We have a backup generator alone just for the dispensing station.
Okay, good.
So, I mean,
Right.
a long time.
It sounds like a lot, but I also, okay.
Yeah.
20,000 sure sounds like a lot.
Yeah, plus the generator capacity. So I think
Right.
they've rated those under a normal load of about 16 hours, just with what the fuel is with the generator. but then we can continue to fuel it in the event of a power outage.
In the 20,000 gallons, is that designated exclusively for the generator, or would our buses and
It's for
emergency-
buses,
Oh, okay.
but it is diesel's diesel at that
Right,
point.
sure.
Yeah.
And then in the event of an emergency, say a Cascadia subduction zone event, I know that there becomes a priority of agencies receiving fuel. Are we on that list? And if so, how high up are we? I imagine we're below police fire, but.
We're still considered an emergency responder, so
Okay.
we are higher on the list. And we have, we purchase our diesel fuel through 4 different vendors that were on each of their lists, so we can.
Okay.
We have different avenues for those. And we also have a standing intergovernmental agreement with the state motor pool, that we can coordinate fueling plans as well, both diesel, unleaded, and natural gas.
Okay.
Is this the, enough to last for the recommended 2 weeks?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Everybody is cautioning and advising wherever you get community emergency response information to be prepared for a 2-week when you can't get anything from anybody. So would that be a 2-week amount of fuel for what our needs are?
For our underground storage for the buses?
Mhm. For the
Is that what
buses or for the generators, for the
Yeah,
buildings?
the generators, I'm not concerned, we're gonna have lots of capacity for those. Understanding that in the event of an emergency, we're not gonna be worried about on-time performance on Route 11. So our capacity will be diminished, our fuel usage will be diminished. And it really depends on where we're at with our fuel delivery. If we're, in the midst of waiting for that 10,000 gallons, then we buy in 10,000 gallon loads. If we're waiting for that, then we're at half capacity. We buy fuel loads about every 3 weeks. So yes, in theory, under even normal conditions, we would be able to get by for 2 weeks, everything.
Because we'll probably be evacuating rather than getting people to their places like normal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And I appreciate the extra information.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I have one final question. What's the local match? What's the percentage?
I believe it's 80/20.
It's 80/20.
Oh, it's on the supplemental. Thank you.
Oh, I do have one question. Where would the generators be located? I know it's somewhere here, or is that something we shouldn't be saying?
No, you will actually see it, though, the generator in front of the maintenance building. So the maintenance building has 2 different panels, so we're going to use one generator tied into both. So it's going to go, there's an electrical box, if you're familiar with the outside of the maintenance, it's going to go to the side of that. The generator for the administrative building is going to go in next to where the modular building is. We'll probably lose a couple parking spots right there, but that meter is fed right there. So they'll sit on solid ground.
Okay. So a follow-up question then, are we responsible for that kind of thing for this building as well?
We are not, and I'm not familiar enough I'm not sure what the provisions are for this building.
So that's a condo arrangement. There's actually a generator in the parking garage
Okay,
that runs this facility. The county takes the lead on it.
thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions, do we have a motion?
I move that the board authorizes the general manager to execute a contract with R.L. Reimers Company for a not-to-exceed amount of $291,000.
I'll second that.
Okay. Director Bush has seconded. Discussion.
I am curious about what our responsibilities would be in what we might consider a long-term interruption to regular service, like a major power outage, because we had fires that were taking out our ability to receive power, or Cascadia subduction.
I'll give the technical, it depends. Certainly, we will be in evacuation mode, but we're still will be working to maintain as much service as possible. And there's a variety of factors there, of what roads are open, how many employees we have on hand, and how much we have to divert to evacuation. We don't actually would stop all transit operations and then go only to evacuation. We would attempt to do as much of both as possible. But certainly immediacy after an event would probably be more evacuation, and as that tails down and get back to service.
And who do we work in coordination with in terms of understanding where and how to best deliver the service?
So Karen Garcia, who's our security and emergency management manager, sits on, there's a commission with the city emergency manager, the county's emergency manager and planning team. So there is a consortium that continually works on these things. So she's at the table, and that's how we stay sort of connected and talk about sort of these potential events. A lot of our response depends on the timing of the event. The timing may be different at 3 in the afternoon than it is at 3 in the morning. So they talk about those scenarios, and I believe every once in a while they do have quasi drills as well. So, but she's very connected. She's our conduit to that larger regional response.
And can you remind me what the role of the board would be in responding to an emergency situation like that?
I don't know how to drive a bus.
We're all in trouble. Sure, certainly there'll be policy implications. We'll probably have activate emergency board meetings. It just kind of depends.
Okay.
Is this something that we as a board should be informed more about? Because it sounds like we're kind of out there with nothing. I mean, not nothing, but not enough to keep going as a board. Does that make sense? Like, we probably should have some training, or at least be informed as to how our district is operating.
I think maybe an information session on.
I think probably the first thing would be potential future work session on emergency operations.
That would be helpful, yes. Thank you for interpreting what I was trying to say.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And I think Mr. Thompson's up again.
Good evening. Tonight, I am asking the board to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Creative Bus Sales for the purchase of 35 CNG tanks and valves for a not to exceed amount of $131,075. The district currently operates a fixed route fleet of 64 35 and 40-foot buses, fixed route buses. 34 of those buses are powered by compressed natural gas. 29 of those buses have recently been replaced. The remaining 5 have CNG tanks that are expiring. Each of the buses contains 7 separate CNG tanks capable of holding 4,500 psi. At the time the buses were manufactured, the CNG tanks had a 15-year certification, after which they are rendered unusable. An invitation to bid was issued on December 27, 2019, and closed on January 20th, 2020. 2 companies submitted bids that were reviewed by an internal committee. The bids received by Creative Bus Sale was deemed to be the lowest cost while meeting the required specifications. The tanks will be replaced by Cherriots maintenance staff. Table A in your packet breaks out the cost of the tanks and the pressure relief devices, or the valves. Funding for this project is listed in the fiscal year 1920 adopted budget in the Capital Projects Fund section. The project is funded with federal grants and local match. Staff recommends the board authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Creative Bus Sales to purchase 35 tanks and tank valves for a not to exceed amount of $131,075.
Are there any questions from Mr. Thompson?
What is the lifespan of the tanks again?
So when the Orion 7 buses, when we purchased those in 2002, 2005, the tanks had a 15-year useful life. It's a certification by the Department of Transportation. The tanks that we're purchasing for this ask now and the buses that we're receiving have a tank life of 20 years. So the FTA recommended minimum useful life of the bus is 12 years. So we should be able to make this our last tank purchase, if we're fortunate enough. Knock on wood.
Because of our electric bus process.
It could be, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we have action to take. Do we have a motion? Okay.
I move that the board authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Creative Bus Sales for the purchase of 35 CNG tanks and tank valves for a not-to-exceed amount of $131,075.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, a second from Director Bush. Is there any discussion?
Just a comment. Thank you again for the great work on the report.
Absolutely.
All right, with no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up, we're moving to the informational reports portion of our agenda, and we have the performance reports.
Yes, so we'll ask Chris French, Senior Planner, to please come up.
Good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. I'm here this evening to sorry about this.
While Mr. French is pulling that up, I'm
Sorry about this.
No worries. Mr. Trimble, I'm wondering if you could explain what a trapeze schedule is. Yeah.
So Trapeze is our current software that we use for our fixed route bus service. It's a scheduling and routing software that's used on our fixed route services.
Great, thank you. It lost a lot less colorful than I was imagining.
Could we let
Trip Choice go?
Sure.
go, and I'll go upstairs and grab it off my computer and come back.
Okay. Next up, Trip Choice report.
Sure, we'll ask Kiki Doman to please come on up.
All right. Oh.
If you press escape, and then in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little projector screen. Right by the zoom in. Yep, click there.
Just scroll, it's after this, isn't it? Just,
It is,
just-
yeah.
just- just-
Okay, hold on. Sorry about this. Page down. There it is. Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, yeah. Yay. Okay, sorry about that. All right. Well, President Davidson, members of the board, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm excited to represent the Trip Choice program and give you some updates about what has been going on with the district's transportation options program. So Trip Choice has 4 identified goals, one being awareness and understanding. So we conduct a lot of community outreach. So for example, we were actually invited to be a part of a sustainability event for students at Willamette University in the fall. And so Cherriots had a table there where we displayed transit access, transit routes, and explained how easy it is and easily accessible transit is, among other transportation options as well. There is a high level interest at Willamette University for active transportation, and so we provided rules of the road resources as well as safety tools, and with the fall time change, it was just a perfect opportunity to distribute all those safety lights and reflective gear as well to the students, and they were very, very appreciative of that. One of my absolute favorite events that we actually have on a quarterly basis is with our ETCs. So as we all know, this industry has a lot of acronyms. And so as a refresher, ETC stands for Employee Transportation Coordinators. And so this is a group where it's basically a collective group of individuals that are our advocates for employer sites. And they're just amazing to work with. They're very engaged individuals that are really striving to make a positive difference in their workplace with transportation options, parking strategies, and then also commuter benefits. And so we have this quarterly meeting that we host here in this room, actually. And we invite community partners to also provide updates on transportation initiatives or other relevant content that's going on at the time. And then we also provide updates program-wise and then district-wise as well. So it's just a really great group that I look forward to every quarter. They're really engaged, like I mentioned before, and they always share best practices on how they communicate with their workforce. So I'm excited for our next meeting in late March, so I'm hoping this little guy will let me attend because it'll be a lot of fun to see them before I head out on leave. So our next goal that I would like to highlight is expanded markets. So one program that we actually have that I'm just actually thrilled to update you all on has really served as a catalyst for positive conversations about transportation options and commuter benefits in the workplace, and that program is our Group Pass program. And so it was officially launched in the fall, and it has just gained traction and gained interest, and it's just been just very encouraging to see just a change in mindset with commuter benefits and how valuable it is. So this program allows organizations to provide their employees with discounted transit passes. And so we just have had just a great experience working with our employers that have enrolled. And I'm happy to report that Salem Health also enrolled in late December. And they've just been a pleasure to work with. It's been a very, very healthy, positive partnership. And yeah, so we're really, really excited. They have a lot of changes going on over there. So we're happy to come alongside them and help them in that transition. And the program has, again, kind of led to a lot of different meetings and conversations with a number of employers. So it's just been a great catalyst for a great positive conversation of behavior change. Another program I'd like to highlight real quick is our Valley Van Pool program. So just as a refresher, again, Valley Van Pool is a collective kind of collaboration effort of just encouraging van pool for commuting. And it started out as with the 3 partner agencies. And so it's Trip Choice, a transportation options program down at LTD in Lane Transit District, and then also Cascades West Rideshare. And so And just as of, I believe in the next month, Smart Transit will also be a part of it officially. But so Cherriots of Choice subsidizes 41 vans currently, and how a van is eligible for a subsidy is if the van starts, ends, or passes through our region. So we have 41 of those vans that are traveling from Portland, Eugene, the coast. We have a number of vans that are just traveling everywhere, and so we're excited that we have the opportunity to support and help make commuting more affordable for those employees. Program-wise, our Valley Van Pool partners all came together, I believe it was about the end of the summer of 2019, and realized that Valley Van Pool needed a little bit of a facelift. And so we've been going through some rebranding efforts the last few months, and excited that in mid-April all those efforts should conclude. So the next time that this report is given, you'll be seeing a new, fresh Valley Van Pool with new collateral, new logo, and then also Van Pool wraps as well. So the next goal I'd like to highlight is safety. So we take any opportunity that we can to promote and encourage safety habits. And so, for example, Falls City had an active transportation event where we were able to distribute helmets for participants that needed helmets. And during the fall, we provided Cherriots operators with safety lights to riders, or to distribute to riders. So not only to so the lights kind of serve as a twofold benefit, because the riders are able to use them to obviously be seen by other drivers and be safe, be seen, but then riders can use them at the bus shelters too, so the operators are able to see whoever is there at the shelters waiting for them. So it's just a really great tool with a high ROI. So it's a great way to just show customers that we care about them, and we want to make sure they're safe and enjoying their experience on our buses as well, and being safe. So Get There Oregon. So Get There is our statewide ride matching database. So formerly we used Drive Less Connect. So about 6 months ago, this new Get There platform was launched. So we use this statewide, so all of our other counterparts throughout the state also use this site. And so these are our region's numbers. So you can see that there's a jump from Q1 to Q2. And just to give some context of what these numbers kind of mean throughout other portions of the state. So we have 926 as of Q2. But in Lane County, which is Eugene, Springfield area, there's 1,004 registered users. In Rogue Valley, which is southern Oregon, so Medford, Ashland area, is about 401 registered users. And then in Cascades West region, which is Lynn, Lincoln, and Benton counties, there's 629. So we're staying kind of competitive and comparative to the rest of our regional partners as well. So this is our mode split for our region alone. All of this data is self-reported. So as you can see, carpool, most of our users are reporting their carpool trips, and with bike, van pool, and transit closely behind. So the Get There Challenge. So I believe this is about the 4th year that we've had a statewide challenge. And so, but what was different about the 2019 challenge is that we used our new tool. And so we were all still trying to figure it out and statewide. And so overall we had 2,263 statewide participants that participated in the challenge. So this, again, challenge participants report and log their trips and all the different transportation options that they utilized throughout the challenge time. And we had 218 of those participants. So after the challenge concluded, all of our transportation options partners, along with ODOT, we all went into a room and kind of reassessed and reevaluated how to approach the 2020 challenge effectively. And now that we're all more comfortable with the tool and more comfortable with like knowing its capacity, it's a way more user-friendly database that we're excited about and can engage the community a little bit more. We're very, very encouraged that these numbers will definitely increase for the 2020 challenge. But, yeah. And with that, that concludes my update, and I would love to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from Ms. Doman? Director Wynn.
2 questions. During our work session, we had learned of a smaller sample size. There's some research done for the flex going into Monmouth, Dallas, etc. There were some reports of those folks utilizing those lines on an on-demand call service for work. How much data sharing happens between Trip Choice and other regional, local, to explore the possible matching? Because I'm a big fan of Vanpool.
Yeah.
It's the most efficient VMRs. The VMTs are, because of the way the subsidies are designed, it fills the capacity the most. So I'm just curious if we're trying to expand adoption of more van pools into other routes that might not be commonly thought of to be able to get information.
Yeah, absolutely.
For route matching.
Great question, Director Wynn. As of now, I don't think that I know the data off the top of my head, and I could definitely get that information on how we share that. So is the question more about kind of the mode split between the Polk County Flex and then van pools in that area as well? And
Yeah,
how to
as
kind
they
of
were
do
looking
that
to
mode shift?
Yeah, as they're looking to be as flexible as possible while also maintain efficiency. Like, is there any sort of cross-programmatic data sharing? So that way, because some of these folks might require deviation from those fixed routes, like maybe those folks can join a van pool or create a new van pool or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we can definitely work with our internal folks about exploring that. I think the big thing with that is just trying to make sure where's the destination and if a van pool would be feasible, because typically a van pool, for it to be feasible, would be 20 miles plus. And with the flex, I know, so we can definitely explore how we can gather that data. And
Sure. And then second question was, I know that a while back, the 2 service providers that you work with consolidated.
Yes.
Have you seen a plateau because there's lack of competition of the 2 trying to get more vans out the road, or has the consolidation helped expand the?
I actually think it's helped personally, on a personal note on that, just because I've seen more of a uptick with van pools and registration and new van pools forming, and I think from an external perspective, it's just a little bit more streamlined, and the vendor that consolidated or that absorbed the other vendor, they've set some very efficient practices in growing those vans, and we've worked really closely with them in van pool formation, and also we actually just conducted a focus group with all the van pool coordinators, and found some great findings of best practices and because each van pool is managed differently, and just with the different culture that all the riders bring to that van pool. And so I just feel like it's streamlined a little bit more, and we're able to actually have a little bit more intentional conversations with both the vendor and the actual van pools now. So I see it being a very positive change.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
One follow-up question with that. Excuse me. So with the consolidation of the two vendors, what is the structure of the vendors being able to operate? Is it like a franchise market, or is it just simply an open market, and at which point they would negotiate with Valley Vanpool to be able to operate?
It is open. We have a sole vendor at this point. So, so there's only one vendor that we have a contract with that provides the vans, but it is open as well.
Okay, so if another vendor were to arrive upon the scene, they could. There's nothing precluding them.
No,
from
not
doing
at
it.
all.
Okay, thank
No,
you.
yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up.
We need a quick moment to
yeah.
switch over the slides.
While Mr. French is preparing the technology, General Manager Pollock will provide his report for us.
Thanks. So I have a few items to report. Just a reminder to all of you that on Monday, March 3rd or March 2nd, we'll be continuing our ongoing celebration of our 40th anniversary with a historical display at the Capitol. So Monday, all day, we will be there displaying memorabilia and artifacts of Cherriots equipment over the years. There's actually a mini version right out here on the window display. But come, if your schedule allows, come by Monday and check it out. It'll be fun. Also, to the two members of our board who used to be on the City of Salem's Transit Committee. If you ever wonder what happened with some of those recommendations,
always.
Well, I have some good news to report. So last Monday night, the City of Salem, their City Council, took action on multifamily housing design projects. And one of the code changes that was voted on Monday was to eliminate minimum parking requirements for multifamily projects within the Central Salem Development Program area and within a quarter mile of Cherriots Court Network. So that is huge to get that through there. That allows us a great opportunity as developers build those to reach out to the management firms to try to create incentive programs with the tenants as they move in. So that's great. It's a win for the developers because it saves them costs and space. They can get more units. And it makes it attractive for us to try to promote that. So, and you know, the Cherriots Court Network's a pretty large area when you put it all together. So this creates lots of opportunities, and we'll be following along on this to see how we can take advantage of that. So that was good news. So one of the discussion items was how to make the community better for transit users, and this was a big win for us. So well done. So earlier today and then tomorrow, you all know I'm on the Garton board. So while we're celebrating our 40th anniversary, Garton today was their 50th, their anniversary date, and they're doing something very similar to us, and they'll be celebrating their 50th year throughout the year. Today was all about internal promotion, and so the board went and congratulated and celebrated with all the employees. Later this year, there'll be external events that the community is involved with, but we kicked it off today with internal. So congratulations on Garton on 50 years of service to the community. And then the last thing I'll report, so you all should have at your tabletops, hot off the press, our latest copy of our annual reports. And looks great. And so that's for your review as your time allows. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. French.
President Davidson there, and members of the board, I'd like to apologize for not coming down earlier and checking to make sure my presentation was ready, but I will move on from here now. So I'm here to present the FY20 Quarter 2 Performance Report. This covers October through December of 2019. We'll look at ridership comparison first. This is looking at average rides per day for the weekday, and we have a increase for the Cherriots local of 9.1 or 1,063 riders a day for weekday service, and for the regional system, a 13% increase, which is 46 boardings a day, and that only covers weekdays service. That does not include Saturdays. Next, we'll look at average daily rides by month. This chart shows that we are up overall for weekday ridership, as well, with a high in October for the local system of over 13,000 rides a day.
Ms. French, when not specified, when you're referencing fiscal year 19 to 20, is it specifically to Q2 numbers or year to date?
It's Q2 dates. It's quarter 2.
Okay, thank you.
And one follow-up question. I see the asterisk in the bottom includes weekly. Does that mean weekday? It says includes weekly Cherriots local routes only?
It's weekday, sorry.
Weekday.
Yes.
That's fine.
It's weekday.
Thank you.
So this does not include Saturday. It's
right.
Weekday ridership only.
Perfect.
As well, the regional average daily ridership is up as well, and November was our high with 429 rides for weekday average daily ridership. Now we look at year-to-date. For year-to-date, the Cherriots local system is up 9, and this is weekday only as well, 9.1%, providing over 800,000 rides within the community. Cherriots Regional is provided 25,262 rides, which is a 13% increase. Cherriots Shop and Ride, Polk County Flex, and Cherriots Lift, as demand response services are down overall. For Saturday, year-to-date, we have provided just over 71,000 rides for year-to-date on Cherriots Local, Cherriots Regional 1,618 rides, and for Lyft 914 rides on Saturdays, year-to-date. Next, we'll look at changes by route, and the measurement that we look at here is rides per revenue hour. And we're looking at our corridor routes first, and we have a target of 20 boardings per revenue hour, with our top performer being the Route 13 with 28.8 boardings per revenue hour. It's a real workhorse out there doing well. Most of the other routes the majority of the routes are close to our 20 boardings per revenue hour target. For our coverage routes, the Route 16 is our top performer with 15.2 boardings per hour. And another interesting route in this section is the Route 27. It's providing 6.1, which is almost double what it was from the previous quarter, or last year previous. We're not exactly sure what's going on here, but we're going to continue exploring. Both the 16 and the 27 are West Salem routes, so an interesting thing that we're seeing happening. For our regional and commuter express routes, we've seen, for the most part, a decrease in rides per revenue hour. These services had trips added to them, and in the regional system, it takes a little bit of time for people to kind of get used to those individual trips. It's not like the local system where you have half hour or 15 or 30-minute service. So these numbers are down, but we expect to see them go up. We're also, as you guys heard from the work session, we're really going to target in this year a marketing campaign towards the regional system to make people more aware of this service. Now we'll look at Saturday ridership for quarter 2. Rides per revenue hour on the corridor routes, the 19 and 21 are performing well above our 20 boarding target, with the majority of the other routes close to that 20 boarding per revenue hours, and a few of them that are still a little bit lower than that, but hope to see those increase over time with the Saturday service. Route 16 and 7 are performing close to that revenue hour target of 10 boardings. Route 6 is a route that I believe at the last board meeting or last quarter's report, I talked about how it doesn't meet up with the downtown pulse, and it's a route that we're trying to figure out what to do with. It's long, it just has a lot of problems, and in order to make it really successful, we need to figure out how to get it to pulse with the other buses. With the Saturday rides, the 40X is our top performer, with the other ones lower, but as we market this service and people become more familiar with it, we expect these numbers to grow in the coming years. And now we'll look at fare usage. This is looking at weekday service fare usage, and it's not looking at the sales, but it's looking at how many passengers have used each fare implement. So full fare, we've seen 30-day pass go up for the full fare and cash fare, with a decrease in the day pass. Reduced fare, a slight increase in the 30-day pass. Day pass use is up, and a slight decrease in the cash fare. The youth fare is up in 30-day pass and day pass usage, and this is a large number that we're seeing, and this is due to the youth fare that we implemented in June last year. With the regional system, the full fare across the board, we're seeing increased use on all of the fare types, and with the reduced fare, we're seeing an increase in monthly, but a decrease in the other. And with the youth fare, we're seeing an increase across the board for all use on the youth system. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. French?
I have one. I'm interested to know, it looks like Route 16 is performing really well, both on Saturdays and on weekdays, in terms of our boardings. At what point would we say, oh, that should shift to a corridor route as opposed to a coverage route? Because if I understand the delineation, coverage routes operate with less frequency, but just allow us to hit a larger amount of area. And then the corridor routes operate with greater frequency and have that benefit. Can you maybe help me understand that if I have it wrong?
No, that's correct. The corridor routes are really the more frequent routes. And we would look, so the core network kind of defines our main corridors that touch that, and the Route 16 doesn't currently really touch the core network. But we would, as ridership builds and we increase, we would look at increasing frequency and look at, does it qualify, or should we start considering that a corridor route? So it's really, we would evaluate it in our needs assessment and look at putting more resources to it. The titles of corridors really talking about that core network, stuff that touch the core network and have high potential for ridership.
Mm-hmm. And I know it would take board action for us to change the core network, but we could conceivably add a corridor route outside of that, or assign frequencies typical of a corridor route?
We wouldn't have to change the core network necessarily to add frequency to it. If demand was there, we would definitely look at how we could increase frequency on that route. It's an hourly route right now, and it's in West Salem, in an area that we've known is a good area for transit, and we're always looking at the routes to see how we can use the resources that we have to better serve the community.
So there's almost always 10 people on the bus if it's 10 boardings per revenue hour, and it's an hourly bus.
Yeah, that's correct. It's 15, during the week it's 15 something, so there's usually, within people boarding and getting off of the 16 is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Is there a way to figure out if that's mostly students? Because with the huge increase in the student bus passes, which routes are they using?
So we don't have very good data right now to dig that deep into the patterns. With the ITS program that we're working on right now, I'm really excited because we're going to be able to see where that ridership is happening, the time of day it's happening. It could be, that number could be that we have, 40 or 50 kids getting on the bus. I don't think that's the case because it would be overloaded, but you could have really busy school trips and the rest of the day nobody's riding the bus. So as we bring our ITS program on, we'll be able to really dig deep into where those trips are happening. Like the 27 that I said doubled in ridership. I really want to know is that the apartments that are up on Gaylor? Is it down by the West Salem Clinic? Where's that ridership coming from? And very soon we'll be able to dig really deep into that and provide a lot more information for us and you and the public.
So then a follow-up on that, is there a way that we could utilize our operators and their experience? They should be able to know when there's more people than other times.
Yes, you can get some data from that, but we have Farebox, but it's not at the stop level, and you have different drivers driving during different times of the day. So yes, you can get to it, but it's
not as accurate.
Yes, having the controls and knowing what's happening and also having and getting so that they can track it. We don't want them tallying things as they're driving down the road. We want them focused on helping customers and driving the bus and not collecting data for us.
Mm-hmm.
They do the Farebox logs, but it's not granular enough for us to really say exactly where people are getting on and off.
Any other questions?
I noticed you said Route 6 was kind of an anomaly, and maybe there's a need to do some realigning of stuff in South Salem because we've got some big holes in the service out there.
Yes, we have the Route 6 in South Salem is on our list of projects that we're looking at as far as the needs assessment, things that we're collecting, that we've been collecting from the public and feedback from social media. We have a lot of information from that area and other areas in town, and we are in the process of starting our needs analysis process. And so we'll be looking at all of those things and seeing where or how we shift routes or resources to better serve the community.
Director Wing.
Thank you. Small request for Saturday, since it's still relatively new. Would you mind on the pie chart currently changing that to a month-to-month before we have enough data to look at it in a year-to-date kind of format, if that's okay? And then my other question, I know Mr. McCoy is not with us tonight, but just the fact that our youth fair is now a third of once was, has the larger net yielded more revenue overall for us?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I'll defer that to either Alan or.
So next month, he'll be presenting the financials that would be tonight, so we'll make sure he answers that question. I'm trying to see if I can find it.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. I know for weekday service, 20 rides per revenue hour is the target. Where does that target come from?
It's kind of an industry standard, and it's kind of our service guidelines document.
Mm-hmm.
We created that document and created our measures that we were going to look at. We did a lot of research reaching out to similar agencies and kind of developed that goal. As we expand our service and look to the future, we will look to adjust those numbers to reflect what we would like to see. So we have a goal of 20. When we have CAT AVL and all of the data collecting so we can see, then we'll really start to focus on where things are, to look at why things aren't meeting what we think, where the parts of the route that are heavily used, and maybe look to realign things to try to push those numbers. I would like to see our boardings per revenue hour a lot higher than, I would like to see them all well above 30.
Okay, so you think that's attainable for every route?
I think there would be, I'm talking about the corridor routes.
Okay,
I think
got it.
Getting the corridor routes so that they're performing at 30 boardings per revenue hour, and looking at all of our services. We're looking at, with the rides per revenue hour, we're looking at the regional system and reaching out to see if might be a better measurement, because you have fewer people, but they're traveling more miles. So looking at some different ways of improving how we're measuring the quality of our service or the performance of our service.
Okay, thank you. And then for the fare usage, I was wondering if in the next quarterly report, if we have this data available to be able to display on a percentage basis of how many are cash fares, how many are 30-month or 30-day fares, and how many are day pass fares. If that data is not available, totally fine. But I'd just be curious to see, like, I mean, I see the percent change, for example, for the youth fare. There's big growth across the board, but I'm curious how many of those youth are paying with cash as opposed to taking advantage of the monthly program.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll break it down. We don't know what it'll look like, but we'll break it.
Sure.
Somehow
yeah.
we'll be able to break it down with what data we have.
Yeah, okay.
We'll look into it and give you the best data that we have.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. French? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda item is the board member reports. And so if I could turn the board's attention to page 85 in the board report, that has the breakdown of the key boards and committees that we serve on. The first board or committee that's listed here is the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. I serve on that, and I mentioned in last month that they're actively searching for a new executive director. That search is ongoing. Since our last meeting, they have started a national search for a new executive director. So I wanted to give that update for that. And then next up is the Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation, another body I serve on. And the key finding that is relevant to this board that I wanted to highlight is it's a study being conducted by Oregon Cascades West Council of Government. They, along with the Institute for Policy Research out of the University of Oregon, is conducting an analysis on the feasibility, the demand, and then also looking into the actual execution of a regional route that would run from Junction City in Lane County all the way up to McMinnville in Yamhill County. And so there's several gaps along that clearly balkanized network that could be filled by a unified route. And so there's, right now, they just presented preliminary, basically the beginning of the research, how they're gonna go about doing that. They will be reaching out to communities along that route, and I know Mr. Dickey is working point on that for us, and so we're involved in that, and I think it would be a great, if there is a sufficient demand, to be able to see that actually actualized. So Director Carney or Director Krebs, SCATS, any reports there?
Oh, well, I attended the last SCATS meeting, and the meeting this month was canceled, so this SCATS meeting occurred a couple days after our last board meeting. Basically, there wasn't too much activity. We did approve some minor changes in the tip. They were just tip amendments. That's the Transportation Improvement Fund program plan, and they discussed safety improvement performance measures and some real concerns because pedestrian numbers are going up, and some of this, I was stopped at a signal the other day and 4 people went across the street, not one of them was looking at anything but their cell phone. And they used to have a slogan, don't get caught dead sitting on your seatbelt. Well, now I think we need to say don't get caught dead looking at your cell phone, because when you're crossing the street, pay attention to that clown that doesn't stop. And I was driving the other day and a guy blew a stop sign. I mean, I didn't hit him, but I'm saying, and he probably just didn't see it or made a mistake. It's so you have to be aware when you're out with motor vehicles, and don't get yourself in a situation where you're looking at your cell phone and somebody runs over you. Other things that are going on there, they're working on their unified planning work program, and that's going to come back for some action in the future. And then there was a discussion of the Oregon Transportation meeting, which is coming up in December, because they're going to make some decisions on dealing with metropolitan planning organizations and acts. And so there will be representatives from these groups at that meeting. A lot of discussion about the greenhouse gas initiative. As you know, that thing is going around in the legislature right now, and it's a lot of controversy, and I'm not going there. And then just some very general announcements and so forth. And the next meeting will be next month, so stay tuned.
Okay, thank you, Director Krebs. Next on the list is for Director Richards, if you have anything to report for the State Transportation Improvement Fund Advisory Committee or the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee.
I haven't gotten anything, even been able to go to anything or find out about it. I've been a little bit under the weather, so
Completely
I will
understand.
definitely do that.
Thank you. And then next is the Citizen Advisory Committee.
We did not meet in January, but we will be meeting in February.
If I may, so the next meeting is March 17th.
March 17th.
Great.
Yeah, because February's almost over. March.
Yes. St. Patrick's Day. Okay. And then if there's other, for example, neighborhood reports that the board would like to say, I'll kick it off with, I attended ELNA, which is East Lancaster Neighborhood Association, several weeks ago, and I don't want to bring up too much from the meeting, but they're excited about the changes, and then they had some specific requests that I'll be passing along to staff about particular bus shelters or bus pads that could be put in there to improve service in that area. So, and then I also attended the State of the City address by Salem's mayor, and I wanted to just highlight for those that maybe weren't able to attend that he did do a shout out to Cherriots and the good work that Cherriots staff are doing, and so he is encouraged by the changes that are coming about, particularly Saturday service and then soon to be Sunday service. So, and I also want to shout out our very own Director Bush, who received the Chairs Award at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments annual dinner a week ago? It blurs together, but
Definitely.
yeah, so in fact, looks like.
A couple of words to say.
Please.
This is what the plaque looks like. I was not able to speak when my name was called. I was a blubbering mess. But it says Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments 2019 Board Chair's Choice Award, Colleen Bush, in recognition of their dedicated work to build community support, understanding, and cooperation in her service as a member of the Salem-Keizer Transit Board of Directors. It's been an honor to represent you, and I do want to, if you let me indulge me, I have a couple of things I do want to say, and I typed it out, and I have to find it. too many papers. Here it is. So when I joined or ran for the position, I was a homeschool mom and just excited to be in my community, and I had no idea what I was getting into. Since I was elected by the people of Kaiser to represent their transportation needs on the board, I was determined to learn about public transportation, the people and businesses of Kaiser, and Cherriots. It's like being fed by a fire hose. It was awesome. Yes. I depended on my husband, who is here tonight, and my family, and Hirsch Sangster and Kathy Clark, who also have earned their some awards in their areas. My church family to keep me going and keep my integrity intact. I depend on the Cherriots board and staff. Thank you very much. And external committees that we've just been talking about, neighborhood associations, the city's different chambers of commerce, government trainings, there's a lot involved in this position. And all the people they represented and are made up of for information, connections, processes, and the need for transit in our community. Among other goals, as the district found a way through House Bill 2017 to provide what had been asked for since 2008, celebration became the natural result. Way to go, Cherriots. And I've been hearing so much about that in our community. It's been an honor to do that. Honor to represent you in the Salem and Kaiser area. And at the county and state and federal levels, we were able to be at Congressman Kurt Schrader's roundtable the other day, and Director Krebs will speak on that. Cherriots has risen to the occasion. You provided the requested service with more to come. You have rolled with the punches and come out on top. Because of this, our riders have increased their use of your services in phenomenal fashion. Budgets, safe drivers, grants, and people service awards are super encouragements to say, a job well done. Thank you, Bob, for putting up for everything I've done. You have even put yourself in community service. Thank you, Mr. Sangster and Mayor Clark, for asking me to serve and shoring me up every step of the way. Thank you for your mentorship. And I do, again, congratulate Hirsch and Mayor Clark on their awards. Hirsch won Kaiser's First Citizens Award, and Mayor Clark won the James C. Richards Award from the League of Oregon Cities. Thank you, church family, for your prayers. Thank you, the board, again. I keep telling you thank you. Thank you. You're precious friends. You're great colleagues. I thank the Kaiser citizens. I'm hometown proud, can you tell? And I am just a humble servant. So it was, I don't know, I've never won anything like this. So there it is again. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bush, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Gentlemen on the end, do you have anything I'm sorry, Director Krebs and Director Richards. We'll move down to my right and then move on to the left. So, however you would like to do it, if you have anything to report out.
Well, I attended the MPO meeting, or the OMPOC meeting, and that stands for Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization Consortium, and it was held in Adair Village, which is it's a suburb of Corvallis. Now, do you think Corvallis is big enough to have a suburb? And one of the reasons it has a suburb is the housing is about 20% cheaper in Adair Village for the same size home. That was a very interesting meeting, and it was not a real long meeting, but we had a lot of talk about various activities. One of the major things that's happening is that OMPOC, which is the Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization Consortium, is going to have a summit following the League of Oregon Cities conference in November, and this will be directly following so people can stay over. One of the problems that the metropolitan planning organizations have in this state is there's 9 of them, and most people don't even know what they are. I mean, we just talked about the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, which is, we call it the COG for short. That's our metropolitan planning organization, and they deal with a lot of the transportation dollars that go into our systems, both our roads and our bus systems and other types of infrastructure. Federal dollars come in, and the COGs do the planning and help, They also provide services to some of the smaller communities that don't have enough money in their budget to pay for a full-time attorney. So they have attorneys that work with smaller cities, and they have people that help them do grants because, again, small cities have very small staffs, and they don't have the people that can do these things. So this summit that OMPOC is planning is following a normal conference. It'll just be one day extension, and it'll give all those leaders that are attending that conference a chance to extend to the OMPOC conference and get some information about metropolitan planning organizations and some of the other activities that we see as essential to the future of Oregon and our communities. So I feel that that was probably one of the highlights of the trip. A lot of the other things that came out of it were other things that we've already discussed here, and homelessness and how do we meet the needs and greenhouse gases and all that. So I'll shut up now.
Thank you.
Well, as I said, I've been a little under the weather, but I did get lucky because I'm on the board for Northwest Senior Services, which handles home care units, and I was asked to go to speak to this group, and I was talking to people, and I told them that I had just come into the bus people, and they were ecstatic. There was a matter of fact, they actually clapped, and I said, you know, why is this for? And they said, because we now can go out to our clients on, if we don't have automobile, we can go out on a weekend now and actually get out to the people. And they can't believe that there might be a time when the Sunday will be there, because these people have not been to church in 12 years because they haven't been able to afford it. And now they're clients is what I'm talking about here. And they're really excited about when that happens, because it will be like getting out of prison is what they told me. So it's funny how your life has a way of catching up with you sometimes, but it was really a good thing to hear, and that they really appreciate the attempt to do that weekend service.
Thank you. Director Nguyen.
Sure, not much to report as I was out of country for 2 weeks. Did have excellent world-class service using the Seoul, South Korea, and Tokyo, Japan public transit system. One thing that I really have been highlighting and glowing about is the fact that using their transit passes, you can pay for everyday purchases like at the local mini-marts. And so I was able to avoid a lot of conversion rates and ATM fees because I literally just use my transit card. So as we aspire to be world-class service, one of these days we'll get big enough to do something that revolutionary. But I do have an ask of my fellow board members. President Davidson and I, along with our GM, our CEO, will be in DC for the AFTA conference. When I last attended their meeting, they have asked to just be updated via email, so I will be able to serve for the march. But WISNA, the West Salem Neighborhood Association, takes place on the 16th. I can certainly email, or if one of you would like to attend in my place. It's a very lively crowd, so I just put that ask out there. But otherwise, thank you so much for covering while I was away and trying to do my best to get caught back up before we head out to DC.
Thank you. Director Carter?
Yeah, I was similarly out of town, though not in locations quite as foreign or fabulous, but I did visit my parents in Florida, and we managed to get there and back using a variety of transportation modes with our 4 children, which was a new experience for me. But before we left, I had the opportunity to attend the Grant Neighborhood Association. They were very happy to hear about our Sunday service coming in May, and I informed them about Wi-Fi on our buses and the free trips to and from warming shelters during our colder winter months, and they were appreciative of that. And we will be back there this coming week. Actually, next week is our Neighborhood Association meeting in Grant to talk about the ADA stop improvements along the Winter Street multi-family greenway.
Yeah.
I forget the official name for that, but with the buses and the bikes and the cars and all the good stuff happening on Winter Street. And then the following week is the Highland Neighborhood Association, which I wasn't able to attend last month because we did leave town before that, but I'm looking forward to getting to both of those.
Great, thank you. If there's nothing else, we've exhausted. Oh, please.
I didn't know if our general manager wanted to talk about the SDAO conference that we attended.
Okay, you want to go first?
Okay. It was February 6, 7, 8, 9. We had a variety of caucus meetings and training classes up in Seaside. And
could you explain what SDAO is?
SDAO is Special Districts Association of Oregon. Thank you very much. And we as a special district are members of that. And representatives from our board were there, so myself and our general manager, Alan. And so they have a variety of classes and some business that they conduct to, maybe you can explain that part a little bit more. I don't understand that much on that part. But the keynote speaker was Mark Scharnbroich. Did I say that right? But his emphasis was being present to win. So, for example, not walking in the crosswalks with your face in your phone, being present. I mean, in order to reap the benefits, you need to be part of what, completely where you're at. And I attended an emergency operations plans class. That's why I was interested in that tonight. Some legislative updates. Of course, this was brand new in the session, so they had all the predicting of what was going to happen, and now we're experiencing the predictions. And what else did I attend? I don't think I wrote them all down. Oh, the tax incremental finance, which is the old urban renewal, and how that would work with getting extra funding for our district. And then our annual bus meeting. So I think that's everything.
Okay.
If you want to talk about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would just add, so special districts are those local government entities that aren't your typical cities, counties. Actually, there's over 900 special districts in Oregon, believe it or not. Transit districts are considered special districts, and this was the annual meeting where all the different entities come together to advance the association. There is lots of training and meetings. To also include board elections. It's interesting, they have a caucus process. And, caucus has been kind of in the news lately. These went fairly smooth. Interesting process. We're in the a caucus with a bunch of other different associations, and it's a good session. It's always a little different. I'm used to the Oregon Transit Association where it's very transit heavy, but there is crossover in a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to labor updates and legal updates and different types of training. So it was in Seaside, Oregon, and the weather kind of cooperated. We had some sideways rain, but a good conference, able to catch up with the people. We saw some colleagues from Kaiser Fire there, and some other folks, a few transit folks were there. One of the highlights for me is, which could impact all of you, is they also had vendor displays, and we both saw a demonstration on some potential board packet software to help improve that process. And so we'll be having a demo of it coming up in the next month or so. Yeah, it's always good to see what other people are doing and lessons learned. Even if it isn't transit, special districts have some commonalities, and yeah, so it was good.
Great.
Does this, attending this help us with our special districts insurance?
Yes, it does. So, so as you recall, you're eligible, each special district can be eligible for up to 10% off their insurance payments, getting a credit. There's usually 5 different categories, or 2% discount on each, and one of them is to have someone attending professional training. And we maybe have even checked off 2 boxes this time.
Yep, that's it.
Excellent. If there's nothing else, before we adjourn for the evening, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Linda Galeazzi for her birthday coming up on Friday. So after the meeting concludes, please take a moment to wish her a happy birthday.
Yay.
So with that, happy birthday, and we're adjourned.
You like to be called. So how did it go on?